Guys, you're going to want to do Ironbender this week. I'm not trying to create FOMO, but these two new weapons we're getting are going to be phenomenal. Considering next week we're going to have onslaughts, I want both of these. One being Multimach, the other one being Tusk of the Boar, which is a Strand waveframe grenade launcher. I have so many builds in my head involving Strand that I feel like are going to be perfect for something like Tusk of the Boar. Today, guys, we're going to be going over the random rolls for these weapons in great detail. I mean, this is a very long video for two weapons that we don't even have in our hands yet, but I feel like that is what's required here, considering the traits on these weapons will retroactively be enhanceable in the final shape. So we're not just looking at these weapons based on what it is now in its current iteration, but what it's going to become. Now, with that being said, if you already know exactly how Ironbender works, feel free to skip to this timestamp on your screen. It's also listed down below in the description if you want to go straight to the random rolls for each one of these weapons. However, if you have not played Ironbender in a long time, I'm going to go over what to expect this week. I know I've got a lot of returning players. We've literally had comments from folks saying they haven't played since Beyond Light. Got one comment that was like, Cross, should I play Lightfall? Whoa! Don't do that yet. Let's just get you into the new stuff. We'll mess around in Onslaught next week and take advantage of this Ironbender gear, and then you could possibly check out Lightfall. But again, up to you. With that being said though, Ironbender is returning tomorrow from April 2nd to April 9th at weekly resets, then again from April 30th through May the 7th. Normally Bungie announces what the game mode for Ironbender is going to be, but they didn't really announce anything this past week other than that Ironbender is returning. We're speculating it's going to be the Tribute game mode though. For those unfamiliar, Tribute is a spin on the mode Supremacy, where you get kills and then those players that you kill drop crests. But upon picking these crests up, you need to bank them into a Tribute beacon that will rotate around the map, and once a certain amount of crests are collected, this will trigger the hunt phase, which spawns a beacon in the center of the map that grants extra points as well as turrets around it. Now, this mode was not very popular when it first launched, but Bungie has already announced that they've made a number of changes to it, which is why we're speculating it's going to be returning tomorrow. But they're simplifying the objectives and the scoring, and including changing the trigger for the hunt from depositing max crests to a team scored threshold. They also removed the wall hacks on players that are carrying max crests. That was extremely annoying. They cleaned up the user experience by decreasing the distance at which crest icons can be seen. They've also reworked how quickly the beacons despawn and rotate, and significantly decreased the time it takes to interact to dunk those crests. They reduced the number of turrets that could spawn with the hunt beacon from 4 to 3, and I'm assuming, considering the last Ironbender, we had the option to play either Ironbender Fortress or Ironbender Control. I'm gonna guess that that's gonna be present this week, guys. So if you're not crazy about this week's game mode, surely Bungie's gonna have a setup there where we can go back and forth between both of those modes. And again, Ironbender Control is just control. Now, for those not familiar with the leveling process in Ironbender, back in Season the Haunted, Ironbender received a complete overhaul. It got rid of tokens, it got rid of bounties, and now it works on a challenge system as well as a reputation booster. You see, there will be daily challenges introduced the first 4 days of the week, and they can be completed day by day or all at once if you start late. The challenge is very simple though, just completing 3 matches of Ironbender, which each challenge completed will grant a reputation multiplier to all of your Ironbender games that will last for the rest of the week. There's also additional challenges available, which requires you to earn 50 points in Ironbender while using a specific subclass. For instance, Season of the Wish has been Solar, Strand, and Stasis, and completing these challenges will grant you Pinnacle gear, which is really nice for my folks trying to be ready for next week's Horde mode. Now, we just mentioned the reputation multiplier. This is something unique to Ironbender, which helps you rank up much faster, which is what gives you more loot. This gives you more Ingrams. This gets you more weapons unlocked on that weapon track. But there's 3 ways to increase your Ironbender reputation multiplier. You can complete the 4 daily challenges. You can also use and wear 5 pieces of Ironbender gear, which is very flexible. It can either be 5 pieces of the armor itself from Ironbender, or you can use ornaments for current or previous Ironbender armor. You can also use just Ironbender weapons. And normally what I would do, because I like to rock an exotic armor piece, is I would wear 4 ornaments, but one of my ornaments would actually be a class item from Ironbender with another Ironbender ornament attached to it. This will allow me to count this item for 2, thus giving us this 5 out of 5 for Ironbender gear equipped. Then lastly, simply having an Ironbender emblem will also give you this bonus. And if you haven't unlocked one before, don't worry, you can earn this season's Ironbender emblem by reaching rank 16 on Saladin's reward track. But this also works for any previous emblems from Ironbender. Now, when completing Ironbender matches, you always gain reputation regardless if you win or lose. But winning games giving you more reputation. There's also an activity streak And once you've played 5 matches in a row, you gain increased reputation from each match. Now, if you are a new light player and you haven't played Iron Banner at all, there's a quest called Forging Iron if it's your first time playing. It's nothing crazy and something you could just do alongside just playing Iron Banner. But it has like simple quest steps, guys. Complete a match of Iron Banner, complete a daily challenge, earn 300 Iron Banner rank points, collect an Iron Banner Ingram from Lord Saladin, complete Iron Banner matches while wearing at least one piece of Iron Banner armor, and then speak to Lord Saladin at the end. Again, all the stuff you're going to be doing anyways as you're chasing these weapons. Now, this takes us to the 2 weapons that are dropping this week. Now, for our random rolls, we're going to start with Multimach. First up, Multimach here has returned to us with origin traits, one being the Skulking Wolf, or while at low health, Guardian Final Blows with this weapon grant enhanced radar and remove you from the opposing radar. The other trait is Field Tested, where defeating targets or dealing damage with this weapon gradually increases range, stability, handling, and reload speed, with swords gaining an increase in charge rate and guard resistance. Now, let me just talk about Field Tested real quick because it's present on both Multimach and Tusk of the Boar. This is a phenomenal origin trait, guys. You see, hits and kills with your weapon will eventually grant you these stacks of field tests. Now, these stacks are substantial, and the buff is only removed on death. In terms of stat bonuses, the first stack, we're talking 3 range, 5 reload speed, 2 stacks, we're talking 6 range, 10 reload speed, but let me just skip all the way up to 5 stacks, 20 range, and 50 reload speed. Now, depending on your role, you can see right here, guys, where you're maxing out the benefits in these stat packages. For instance, Tusk of the Boar with a base of 68 range. Suddenly, at just 4 stacks, we're maxing out our reload speed. This is a very good origin trait in PvE, guys, and not a bad one inside of PvP, although I do like Skulking Wolf just to mess with my enemy's radar. Now, let's look at Multimach's random rolls. Again, everything you're seeing here, guys, is going to be stronger in the final shape. And that's because these weapons are going to retroactively have the ability to enhance these traits. And that's pretty special on something like Multimach. Now, I do want to mention that this weapon does not have the ability to change scopes like it did in the past. You see, back in the day, we used to be able to change up between Model 8, Model 6. You can even go the IS-5 or even that IS-2 Classic. Now, it appears that Bungie has settled on that Model 8 Red. And the reason why they've settled on that, you'll notice that the base zoom of Multimach is 15 instead of 13, which is what it was originally. Now, keep in mind, nothing else stat-wise carries over. There's no increase in range. It's just that base zoom that's actually tacked on, which is really good, especially on a lightweight. But now we have the choice between all these barrel perks. Now, considering that the weapon already has 100 recoil direction, no need for things like extended barrel, chambered compensator. Fellas, you can roll pretty much whatever you want here. You can go small bore to help yourself out in both range and stability. You can go hammer forge if you feel good enough with it. Even corkscrew. Again, I've recommended in the past not going with full bore because it just hurts too much. I know it gives you plus 15 range, but we're talking minus 10 stability and minus 5 handling. No bueno. Personally, I would like a hammer forge roll and just spec it out with even more range with accurized rounds. Then in our first column of traits, we got some interesting ones here because I just don't know what they're going to be like in an enhanced environment. Iron Gaze is a terrible trait because despite it giving you plus 20 aim assist, which is very much appreciated, it's minus 29 range. The question we have is, what does an enhanced version of this trait look like? Normally, when it comes to perks that have double-edged swords, for instance, Slick Draw, in its base trait form, it has a noticeable upside. So Slick Draw, for instance, increases your handling, but notice it says that it significantly decreases target acquisition. But the enhanced version of Slick Draw still significantly increases handling, but decreases target acquisition. So it doesn't have that significant term in there. And instead of that minus 55% in auto aim cone size, it's minus 50%. So it's not a substantial improvement. And the reason why I bring that up is because Iron Gaze, guys, I think it's still gonna offer you that plus 20 aim assist, but it's probably gonna be something like, I don't know, minus 20 range. The question you gotta ask yourself, would you take that? I'm not sure, guys. There's so much tied to range. You know, when we're talking about going in there and taking like a hammer forged rifling roll with accurized rounds and a ranged masterwork, we're talking 19.79 meters. But if I was to slap on Iron Gaze right now, that cuts us down to 17 meters, almost 3 meters here. Now say it's not that minus 29 range, but minus 20, okay? We're talking 17.97 meters. So nearly 2 meters that you're losing there. And again, there's so much tied to range, reticle stickiness, aim assist fall off. The one saving grace about Multimach in this SMG is that its base zoom is 15, which is really good, guys. Like when you compare this to other SMGs, most of them sit around 14 and 13. Matter of fact, there's very few SMGs that have a base zoom of 15. And even though that doesn't necessarily affect range, it does affect things like aim assist fall off and all those other things that makes your weapon stickier even past that range of fall off. Looking across the board though, I'm hard pressed to find SMGs outside of things like Inyo D, Terraba, Multimach, and the Title that has 15 zoom. Now, of course, there are others, but in the lightweight departments, there are not many. Now, with that in mind, even though you may, with a high range roll, range masterwork, accurized rounds, hammer forge, yes, you'll start to experience that damage fall off at 19.79 meters. But even past that point, Multimach should still feel good. Other traits though in that first column that I'm going to be looking at include both moving target and dynamic sway for obvious reasons. Both are really good. Yes, I see under over, which deals bonus damage to targets with overshields, and I will say I will consider it, especially considering how many Titans and how many Warlocks sit behind their barriers and also sit in the rifts. Having an under over weapon is actually really nice, guys, as the base version of this deals 20% increased damage against players' overshields and for body shots against players with woven mail, with the enhanced version supposedly dealing more damage than that, but again, I haven't actually sat down and tested that out. It does say deal improved bonus damage. To what degree? Who knows? Maybe it's like 22% or something. I'm not necessarily saying you should jump up and get that under over roll. I'm just saying having one on standby for a quick swap off may be extremely beneficial. You find yourself up against a number of Guardians, all three of them are rocking bubble. You may want to swap off to it just to catch those overshields. And I got a comment the other day talking about how weapon swapping mid-match is something that they would never do. But guys, it really does work. Like I've literally swapped to a Cerberus mid-match just to shoot down a bubble, which it does very effectively. It's things like this that can win you rounds and win you entire games in places like Trials of Osiris. With that being said though, it does do things like increase damage against barrier champions, and actually a whopping 50% increase. And it also does 125% increased damage against PvE combatant overshields. Something I'm actually going to consider when we take on the subjugators in the final shape. I know they're going to be rocking Strand, they're also going to be rocking Stasis. My question is, are they going to be granting enemies on the field woven mail? And would something like under over work on them? But again, a very niche role. With that being said though, dynamic sway, moving target, both of those are great traits. Dynamic sway especially, considering that it not only boosts your accuracy and stability when holding down the trigger, it procs faster on a faster fire rate weapon. And the enhanced version nets you more benefits. Instead of 1 stability each shot holding down the trigger, and minus 5% accuracy cone size, and minus 10% accuracy cone growth, maxing out its full strength at 10 shots, the enhanced version reaches that maximum strength at 8 shots, with it even being greater than that at 1.25 stability with each shot, and minus 6.25 accuracy cone size, and minus 12.5% accuracy cone growth, all of these stacking up very quickly on a fast rate of fire weapon. This means in roughly 0.47 seconds, you're reaching max benefits with enhanced dynamic sway. Again, the base version of dynamic sway reaches those max benefits in 0.6 seconds, which still nets you benefits mid gunfights. But the fact that you can reach max benefits at 0.46, that leaves you with a bit of wiggle room before reaching its optimal time to kill. Then we have moving targets. It increases movement speed and target acquisition when moving while aiming down sights, and it also grants you that plus 10 in aim assist while aiming down sights, with a decrease in its ADS movement speed penalty by 10%. The enhanced version of that bumps those numbers up just slightly. I don't know, I'm kind of torn, guys, but I think in an enhanced environment, I'm probably going to go enhanced dynamic sway. I feel like the benefits are going to be more noticeable in 1v1s. Now, for my PvE players, I know there's not a lot to play with. You've got attrition orbs, you've got under over. That's pretty much it. Now, in our fourth column, we've got a lot of things that has me wondering, right? Iron Reach, what do we get from that? What is that like as an enhanced trait? Again, similar to Iron Gaze, I'm assuming Iron Reach is going to come down just slightly in its negative perk. It grants you a whopping plus 20 range, which is tremendous. We're talking going from 19.7 some meters to 21.61 meters with the roll that I just mentioned. The problem is your stability is gone. Now, perhaps it's only going to be minus 20 stability, but again, that's a pretty dramatic drop there in our stats. Does it tack on nearly 2 extra meters? Yes, and that is really nice. And I know I got some folks that are going to try to to make it happen, especially with dynamic sway, as that can mitigate some of those issues. Now, kill clip is present here as well, which is always a good trait. Tap the trigger, which is a really good 1v1 trait, just to start off every engagement with that stability bump and that accuracy bump. And again, the enhanced version is even better. Keep in mind, what makes dynamic sway and tap the trigger really good is that you've got two traits both aiding you at different points in the gunfight. Tap the trigger helping you out on the front end, dynamic sway helping you out on the back end. But when we start talking about the enhanced versions, there is a lot of overlap. Again, previously mentioned, enhanced dynamic sway will allow us to reach its effects, its full effects, in 0.46 seconds, whereas tap the trigger, it initially lasts for 0.6 seconds. And that's 40 stability, minus 50% recoil, and minus 10% accuracy cone size, which are some very good benefits, noticeable benefits. And 0.6 seconds is nothing to sneeze at. But the enhanced version nets you those same benefits, but for 0.76 seconds. Fellas, that is practically the gunfight. And so with the time durations here between dynamic sway and tap the trigger in their enhanced form, means you're gonna have a lot of overlap with both these traits, aiding your weapon greatly. What I'm talking about here, guys, is this SMG with those two trait combinations will be a laser. Now, before we address the elephant in the room, which that being target lock, we need to talk about kinetic tremors. Kinetic tremors states that sustained kinetic damage to a target emits a shockwave that damages any nearby targets. Arguably one of my favorite traits in the game. Now, the base version of kinetic tremors on a submachine gun requires 14 shots to activate. And again, it sends out shock waves of damage that deals AoE damage, and it's really good for just planting damage on a high health target. And as the ads like walk into that high health target, it hits them too. Now, based on the most recent podcast interview with Chris Proctor, they actually talked about kinetic tremors and that they're looking to possibly tweak it per subfamily, or for instance, to proc on mag percentage like target lock. Now, Chris did say that this is somewhat of a problem, as they can either do tuning per weapon time or magazine size, but they can't easily combine both of those. Again, I'm not too sure what this may mean for the future for us, but this does take us to enhance kinetic tremors. As far as I know, this will be the only SMG that can get enhanced kinetic tremors, which makes something like Multimach pretty special. Now, the enhanced version normally requires less hits for activation. Since we haven't gotten this on a submachine gun yet though, we don't know how much less than 14. But for things like pulse rifles, instead of it requiring 11 hits, it's 10. Non-burst sidearms, instead of it being 11, it's 7. Hand cannons, instead of it being 6 shots, it's 5 shots, so on and so forth. So there is going to be a drop here. We just don't know to what degree we will get that drop. What I will say is that a Multimach with enhanced kinetic tremors and enhanced attrition orbs, no lie, fellas, that would cook. Considering that attrition orb literally procs from sustained damage. Now, the enhanced version doesn't proc attrition orbs sooner, but it does give you an improved orb of power, thus netting you more super energy. Now to the elephant. Let's talk target lock. Target lock has really fallen off for me, guys, because it just activates too late in the game. SMGs require 20% of their magazine to be fired in order to reach that first stack. Now, I need to test this in more detail when I get a target lock roll. I'm almost certain that it's not going to be something I want on Multimach, but we're going to test it nonetheless, because again, that's base target lock. The enhanced version of target lock still is going to require that same 20%, but instead of it giving you 16.73% more damage when target lock procs, it'll be 18.82%. I mean, when we get into these like fractions of numbers, things really just require us to go inside of Crucible, line somebody up, blow our load into their face at multiple resilience levels to really narrow things down. Again, I am almost certain target lock is not going to be the trait for me in this final column, but we will still give it a go just in case. Long story short, with everything on Multimach, guys, and I know this has been a very long pre-review of this SMG. This is a solid SMG though. Definitely one you should go after in this week's Iron Better. And again, it's only going to get better with those enhanced traits. Now, this takes us to our next weapon, and the weapon that I know every PvE player is going to be trying to get, and that's Tusk of the Boar. This is a special waveframe grenade launcher. It's also a strand waveframe grenade launcher. All of the origin traits we mentioned a second ago are also present here, with field tested being the most beneficial one, especially in that reload department, if you're going to be reloading with it manually. Now, of course, there are options to navigate around this. We've got things like Envious Assassin, where defeating targets with other weapons before drawing this one transfers ammo to the magazine from reserves. That, of course, overflows the mag. Now, Bungie has actually come out and nerfed Envious Assassin, but again, there's going to be an enhanced version of Envious Assassin, which nets you more ammo being overloaded per kill. So instead of it being 20% on special weapons, it's like 22.5%. So you can imagine planting a shot with Tusk of the Boar with Envious Assassin, swapping over to your primary weapon, getting kills with it, and then swapping back over and having your Tusk of the Boar with multiple rounds. Now, Now, everyone's gonna say, Cross, why would I use this over Forbearance? You said we were gonna get Chain Reaction and Hatchling on the same roll. Well, fellas, I thought we would. You know, I thought Bungie would be bold enough to give us such a thing. Obviously, they didn't. But with it being a strand weapon, dude, can you imagine unraveling rounds? You get unraveling rounds on this, and it's able to carry that through every target it strikes. And then if unraveling rounds takes out the enemy and procs Chain Reaction, this weapon is gonna be nuts. Now, look, I don't wanna get too carried away into that fourth and final column. Let's just stay in that third column. We've got Slice, we've got Slimeways. Slimeways, by the way, is good, but keep in mind, guys, it's got a cooldown. It's not as cool as Slide Shot. I wish it was. There would be so many weapons I could take advantage of if that was the case. And even the enhanced version of Slimeways means that you cannot constantly just slide to reload. There's a reason why Slide Shot is so good, and that's because you can pretty much back-to-back reload by sliding over and over. Crux is one of the best DPS rockets in the game. We did an entire breakdown on that rocket launcher. But let me tell you, if Crux had Slimeways instead of Slide Shot, it would be garbage. Now, I wouldn't say it would be garbage, but it wouldn't be as good as it is with Slide Shot. And I know everybody's like, Cross, who slides during the damage phase? Look, when the Witness has his ball sack in your face in the final shape, you don't want to be that guy that's like, dude, if only I had a Slide Shot Crux termination, I could have got through that day one raid. Don't be that guy. But back to Tusk of the Boar. Slimeways, I don't know. We'll see. Slice, now that's a good one. Casting your class ability allows this weapon to sever targets on hit for a brief duration up to a maximum number of targets. Now this is great. You're applying sever to targets. You're giving them that debuff. This also ties into our artifact mods that allows users that are radiant to deal damage to targets affected by stasis and strand debuffs. But considering that this is a wave frame, you're hitting multiple targets at once, boom, multiple targets at once are debuffed and are no longer doing maximum damage to you. Now, as far as I know, the only other special weapons that come with the enhanced version of Slice is Scatter Signal and Super Cluster. That's it. The problem with both of those weapons is that you're not going to hit multiple targets at once. Versus Tusk of the Boar being a wave frame, you will. Now, what does the enhanced version do? It just gives you more duration there to apply that debuff. Instead of 8 seconds, you get 9 seconds. Sometimes, fellas, it's that last second. That's all we need. Now, another perk not to overlook, especially when we're stacking it with things like Field Tested, is Inline Action. Inline Action states that dealing damage improves reload speed and handling. And these are some nice benefits. It stacks up to 12 times. It will actually give you all the way up to 50 reload speed, which you don't need, especially if you're rocking things like Field Tested. But you can have some crazy reloading happening here within just like a few stacks. Now, the enhanced version of Inline Action doesn't make this huge difference. It just gives you +5 at its maximum stats. So instead of 50 reload and 50 handling, 55 reload and 55 handling. Now, moving on to that fourth column. We're going to start with Chain Reaction because that's obviously the one you're all going to go with, even though I think Hatchling would be a very good play. But let's talk Chain Reaction. First, before I get too deep in this, in the interview breakdown with Chris Proctor, they talked about Chain Reaction. It's getting a nerf, guys. But it was mentioned that it's more of a branching out rather than a nerf. You see, Bungie wants to put Chain Reaction on things like shotguns, which I'm not entirely against. However, despite the diplomatic dialogue there from Chris, I do look at this as a hefty nerf because special weapons are getting 15% smaller detonation radius with Chain Reaction, and they're gonna do 20% less damage. Now, I misspoke a while back about heavy weapons. Heavy weapons are not getting that nerf. Matter of fact, they're gonna be dealing 30% more damage than it does now. So this is very much targeting things like Forbearance, and in this case, also Tusk of the Boar. Now, the enhanced version of Chain Reaction doesn't do anything to counter this. It simply just grants you more inventory size, that being identical to a single reserve mod, therefore increasing your ammo counts. In some ways, that's still good because you get more shots, but no, this nerf is definitely going to affect our special weapons and also Tusk of the Boar here with Chain Reaction, which takes us to Hatchling. Guys, I want you to really consider Hatchling. You see, precision final blows are rapidly defeating targets with this weapon spawns a threadling at the target's location. Now listen, we've done some builds this past week with Hatchling involved, and it is phenomenal when you start getting things rolling. The threadling armies you could pull off are insane, and the enhanced version of Hatchling grants us a whopping +5 handling. Really, Bungie? You didn't think they'd give us anything else? With that being said though, I do think Hatchling's probably going to be pretty good here. I know Chain Reaction is all about the kabloomies, but we got to think further than that, guys. We got to think about the day in which Chain Reaction is in its nerf state. And I would argue that if you're rocking things like Strand anyways, dude, go Hatchling. No, you're not going to get the kabloomies, but your threadling's going to go and hit something, weaken it, and then when you follow up with Tusk of the Boar, boom, you're proccing it again. We'll be testing this though because this is an unusual one, but I am curious to see what the proc rate is here with Hatchling. Now, the perks include things like Bait and Switch, Deconstruct is also here, Vorpal, Swashbuckler. For my folks wondering about Bait and Switch, is this a way to go? Look, I'm not entirely against it, but Undercurrent also has Bait and Switch, and I never use it. I always go Volt Shot. Again, I like to lean into my ability builds builds, and I leave perks like bait and switch for the damage dealers. There are special weapons, of course, that I do take advantage of with bait and switch. Supremacy is one of those. But being a rapid-fire sniper rifle and also being Supremacy, that weapon is already a very good sniper rifle in the DPS department. There's not going to be too many places I'm going to stop, camp up, and start blowing my load with bait and switch. On top of that, you've got 10 seconds to take full advantage of that 35% damage buff, which may seem long enough for you, but how many shots can you get reloaded in between that? Now, there is an enhanced version of bait and switch, but that is 11 seconds. Now, on the topic of deconstruct. Deconstruct grants increased damage against constructs and vehicles for 5 seconds, and this is a 40% damage buff. It also refills 10% in the magazine from thin air. Not sure how that's going to work out here. But the reason why I bring this up is that this works against barricades, turrets, stasis crystals, and other objects created in the field. Now, I don't know how crazy these subjugators are going to be in the final shape, but dude, if they're going like full-blown Fortnite and putting stasis everywhere, I don't know, man. Maybe deconstruct could be used. See, this is why my vault gets so full. I just want to be prepared. I'm a Boy Scout at heart. Am I personally going to save a deconstruct roll? Yeah, promise so, guys. I think I will. Now, as far as things like our magazine perks, our masterwork, for me, guys, I always just win for things like velocity. That's been kind of what I like the most. Anything that can pump up velocity just so that I can get my load out faster and to my targets. So, guys, those are all your random rolls, the 2 new Iron Banner weapons. And I know, Cross, how the hell did you talk for this long about 2 weapons? Listen, there's a lot to say here. These weapons are going to get better in the final shape, and I think they are both extremely unique. It has been a long time since I've been like, yo, I am going to get on first thing Tuesday and grind out Iron Banner. But this is an Iron Banner that I will be grinding out. If you want to join us, we'll be live over on our Twitch. We'll be pulling folks from the stream, doing Iron Banner all day with viewers, so come join us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.